said, Madam Vice President, this is a serious question and it deserves a serious response. And at that time, precisely because she was challenged by a journalist who wouldn't just take at face value what she said, she then acknowledged that, yes, this is happening, and that, inshallah, God willing, as if it only depends on God, there will be a moratorium on stonings. Now, notice that she said moratorium. Moratorium is merely a temporary cease. It is not an outright ban. So we just, again, if the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, let us be very vigilant about not getting complacent, that these basic human rights violations are now being scrutinized and therefore lessened in number.
Yeah, definitely. It should be discussed.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
My question is, I am a middle school librarian here in the suburbs in Virginia, and I have a lot of Muslim students. And are you considering writing a version that would be appropriate for 12, 13, 14-year-olds?
Well, frankly, even the adult version of The Trouble with Islam Today is appropriate for 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and I'll tell you why.
Well, I'm talking reading level. I think that...
I'm talking reading level, too. Here's the point, that unlike many academics who talk a good line about democracy and then make their, writing so opaque that ordinary people can't understand them, thinking that this is a status symbol if you're only, appealing to people within your own academic tribe, what I have done is written a book in a conversational, not just controversial, but conversational way, so that The Trouble with Islam Today actually comes off as more of an extended dinner table conversation with my readers, both Muslim and non-Muslim. And proof positive that this is something 13, 14, and 15-year-olds will understand is that, frankly, most of the emails that I receive about the book come from people of that age group, people who are teenagers. That's why I've had to set up a MySpace page, for example, So let us, and I'm not suggesting that you're doing this. I know that you interact with young people all the time, but one of the things that I've come to appreciate is how utterly savvy and intelligent a lot of kids are today, especially when we expect that of them. The key to dignity, I've always found, is to have higher expectations rather than lower expectations of the people whom we are seeking to influence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to be buying the book for my high school library. My question is, I don't know if you can answer this. I'm trying to understand the rationale or how to explain educated Muslims, young males generally, who do violence. I don't get it. I don't know if you can explain it and, where they're coming from. I used to think they were poor, then I've been reading they're not poor, they're educated, and so on.
Okay, that is about the broadest question I've ever been asked.
Okay.
Can you explain, I'm just sort of actively listening here, can you explain to young violence-prone Muslim men how not to do violence? Let me think here. If I could, I think that I would be somewhere in the Middle East right now making serious change on the ground. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a whole set of insights to be brought to bear. And again, not because I want to cop out of the answer, but because I've written an entire book on the answer, at least as far as I see it. You're going to find a lot of those insights in The Trouble with Islam Today. Let me give you one insight that, again, may be a bit counterintuitive, but I think you'll appreciate. I really believe that women are the key to serious change within my faith. Women have the least to lose and the most to gain from breaking the silences. And the way I think that we can begin to empower women in the Muslim world is economically, by offering them micro business loans, $100, $200, to start their own, businesses, earn their own assets, and with those assets, they can do whatever they wish. Why? Because in Islam, there is consensus that when a woman earns her own assets, she gets to keep 100% of that money and do with it as she sees fit. And what can she do with it? For starters, she can become literate. Learn to read the Quran for herself, see all of the passages that it offers for dignity and for her own respect. And later, she and other young or women entrepreneurs can get together and start schools of their own. And lest anybody here think nice fantasy, never going to happen, particularly at a chaotic time, don't be too pessimistic. This is, in fact, what's happening in some parts of Kabul today, where Muslim women are earning their own money, starting their own schools, and in some of these schools you can read signs that say, educate a boy, and you educate only that boy, but educate a girl, and you educate her entire family. In other words, the multiplier effect of investing in Muslim women cannot be underestimated. And this goes back to your question. How do you convince, let's say, Muslim men, and not just young men, Muslim men, to stop doing violence? I'll tell you a quick story having exactly to do with this microcredit idea that I just laid out on the metaphorical table. A few months ago, a photojournalist friend of mine working in Afghanistan called me to say, Irshad, do you remember those progressive verses in the Quran that you identified in your book? Of course, I replied. She said, well, today I met an Afghan woman who took a microcredit loan from a non-governmental organization. She started a candle making business. She's been earning money ever since. She learned to read the Quran with some of the money that she's earned. She found those progressive verses you're talking about, and here's the kicker. She then recited those verses back to her husband, who was illiterate. And when he realized that these verses about women's dignity exist in the Quran, God's word, rather than in some secular declaration of human rights out of the United Nations, he has not laid an unwanted finger on her since. Okay. The big question is, can this idea be scaled up so that we can have a multiple-fold impact on the lives of real people? And I believe it can. My final idea that I'll throw out to you to think about is, why not, forgive the phrase, ladies and gentlemen, a new coalition of the willing? A coalition of rich countries around the world, which, by the way, must include rich Arab countries. They've got to put their money where their mouths are too. Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and others. Canada, the United States, Australia, France, the UK, Spain, all of whom would just take a sliver, forget a slice, let's not even get that ambitious, just a sliver of their national security or defense budgets and pool them into a coherent program of microcredit loans for the women of the Muslim world. Now, there's an idea that emphasizes butter, not guns. There's an idea that leverages soft power. And I cannot emphasize enough that the beauty of this idea is that it is eminently compatible with the teachings of Islam, so that it can even be packaged in religious terms for those societies who most need it. Remember, Khadija, the Prophet's first wife, a wealthy, self-made merchant. And Muslim women can tell their husbands, if you truly want to emulate the Prophet Muhammad's life, you won't simply grow a long beard, you'll be very open to letting me work for myself.